Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Cardello, the Vice President of External Engagement here at Ohio Realtors, and you're listening to the Real View Ohio Policy Talk. I'm excited to be joining you here with my colleague, Anastasia Katkowska, who's the Manager of Advocacy and Research, to discuss the future of housing right here in Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, everybody. Our special guest today is Brad DeHays, the founder of Connect Housing Blocks. It is a company that is reimagining how homes are built. Thank you so much for joining us, Brad.
Well, thank you, Veronica and Anastasia. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the specifics, could you please give our listeners a brief overview of what Connect Housing Blocks is and how it came to be, how you got involved?
So we have a development company, Connect Real Estate. I think we've been a brokerage and development firm in Ohio since maybe 2006, 2007. Before that, we were doing construction and kind of renovations of properties. But we're a commercial construction company, Connect Construction, and then our self-perform group, Mid-Ohio Contracting Services. We've had that for 23 years. So what we saw is as we tried to scale our construction services, it was just the employee pool was getting more and more scarce. So as we continued to grow, we were having difficulty staffing up. And it seemed like where it was just our development company was growing rapidly, and it always seemed like our construction company or our general contracting firm was our bottleneck. So what we wanted to do was we realized that we do a lot of large historic redevelopments and commercial properties. So we wanted to look at was, okay, how do we want to grow? And we're relatively, at that time, we're a young company, and, we had staff that had aspirations. So we wanted to try to see, could we grow a different way? And fund that actually came to us because of a professional athlete that's in town, that's a friend of mine, that had his financial advisor here for a game, actually showed me an investment that they had made into a modular company over on the West Coast. And after me helping their fund look, vet out some real estate deals, they wanted to repay me, and they offered to allow me to go out to the factory on the West Coast and spend the day with the CEO and COO of that company. And in our industry, we call that a brain drain, which is like really typically a hard thing to do, is get another company to like let you come in and I guess you say, open the books. But that's exactly what they did. And we're in a space to where we understand construction, we understand development. So we felt that we could make an equal or superior product, but one that we felt was a little bit more versatile. So we came back, and that was probably 7 years ago. And then we started getting to work, and that's what really got us started.
That's absolutely wild. So what really inspired you to tackle the modular housing space in Columbus? Can you walk us through the start to finish as to how these modular units are constructed? Are there any specific licensing requirements that you need to obtain while building? And how does that factor into your process?
Great questions. So I guess the first thing is there's different types of modulars. So there's, a lot of people ask, well, is it storage containers is it like mobile homes? And no, what it is it's called volumetric modular. So that basically, if you think about like a shoebox, imagine everything inside that shoebox being parts of an apartment, but being finished. So what we are a licensed industrialized unit manufacturer. And every different modular that we produce at a factory is a separately licensed industrialized unit. So that they're all inspected by the state of Ohio. So I typically make the reference to a refrigerator. So if I do an apartment complex as a developer, when I go to put a refrigerator into an apartment, I don't have to like take the back off of the fridge and show and have the code enforcement officials look at the compressor for the HVAC. inspection, or the electrical wiring for electrical, or the ice maker, the plumbing. I mean, that would typically require 3 inspections right there. But the reason we don't have to do that currently is because that refrigerator is an industrialized unit. So it gets inspected in the state where it was manufactured and it gets a stamp. So what we do is we take, as a developer currently, is we take those cut sheets and we put those specifics into our engineering documents that we submit to code, and they look at it and they say, yep, well, this is already inspected by the state where it was manufactured. They look at it for the energy code requirements, but outside of that, they don't have to inspect it. So what we did is we went and got those same licenses. And we went through all the other difficulties in getting the approval for our different modulars. So then now what we do is we build these, all the HVAC, all the fire suppression, all the plumbing, all the electrical, structural, everything, fire rated drywall. So our fire rated assemblies are already done. And all of those are inspected by the state in the factory. So what it does is it cuts down on your on-site code inspections, which, that's typically a welcoming thing for a city code, because they're overworked right now. Plans examiners are overworked, code officials are overworked, and it's just a sign of the times. It's not anything other than that. It's just there's more demand now than ever, and we're growing rapidly, and it's hard to sustain. So with those, we came up that we wanted to do full volumetric modular, because the biggest area in construction that we were having problems with were in the subcontractor trade. So like the groups that do electrical, plumbing, HVAC, fire suppression. And it's not because they're not performing well, it's just because they're also having workforce issues. So this is pre-Intel. So like we had these issues pre-Intel. And I mean, obviously you can imagine they've just exploded since COVID and since all the massive industrial boom that we're having right now. But for us, I mean, this puts 70% of those subcontractor trades now are in our factory. And it allows us then to not only minimize waste on our project sites, because we have roughly 80% less on-site construction waste, but it also allows us to control our installs in a controlled environment indoors. And, it's nice and sunny outside right now, but as we know, that's like 5 months out of the year, maybe. So it's a welcoming thing for the worker. It's a welcoming thing for even the subcontractors, because we still need them. We need them on site to make the hookups to the mains and everything. But what it does is it just reduces their scope in areas they typically have a lot of slippage in anyway. So all in all, it aligns us with developers. It aligns us with local governments, and it aligns us with contractors.
So from kind of this regulatory standpoint, do you see any changes you would like to see from state and local governments to help facilitate the growth of modular housing?
Yes. I mean, the good thing is we've kind of been welcomed with open arms, because I think Ohio is a very forward-thinking state, and Columbus as a city is a forward-thinking city. So even though, leadership is completely different from the state to the city of Columbus, being in the state's capital, there's a consensus on housing. So, more housing leads to more affordable prices. Now there's all kinds of products that what does affordable mean, and workforce housing versus true affordable housing. And we hear this AMI discussion all the time, which is area median income, and what percentage of that is the housing being offered. We do affordable housing, we do market rate housing, we do workforce housing as a development company. So we kind of run all of those different gamuts. And what we're able to do here is a volume play. So we can put a lot of units in service in Central Ohio right now. It could be easily throughout Ohio, but without pulling from other subcontractor trades and further burdening the labor system. So politicians like that, governments like that. I think right now we're just looking to see, now that it's running and now that the units are getting installed, I think everybody's looking to see how they can help. And for us, it's not right now so much a sales component as much as it is just assisting us in the staffing and continuing to grow our facilities and continuing to grow our product line. I think that those are things to where we can really get help. And Michelle Reynolds at the state level mentioned modular several times in her housing report. And I think, in discussions, that was primarily geared towards groups like us. And I think, there used to be a stigma with manufactured anything for housing, and we look at bespoke, which is custom versus manufactured. And there's just like people think that, well, there's some things that I don't, like a car. I mean, we're not buying bespoke cars anymore. You know what I mean? If you are, you typically know that, it can be very expensive, highly customized, but also not as dependable. And same thing with housing now is we're able finally with technology and software to get that consistency out of a factory to where you would never know it was built in a factory, but it's at a higher quality than we could even build a high volume product with bespoke methods. So I think we're just on the cutting edge where software meets machinery, meets excessive demand. And I think that like we're finally at a time in our economic cycle to where we can support it.
This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations.
So I find this fascinating because like I am out there with local governments every day, all day, and I am struggling to help communicate the difference between manufactured and modular because everybody thinks they're one and the same. And you've clearly identified that they are really not, absolutely not. So can you expand upon that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, like, let's say like a manufactured home or you have trailers, right? Which would be like on a rolling cart and a temporary foundation and you set them on blocks. That's a product. And honestly, like, growing up, that was a product that was all around us when we grew up and nothing wrong with that. We do see that things like tornadoes and some of those items like over by Indian Lake, it makes a mess out of that really quick, creates an unsafe situation. But it's shelter and it's housing. Then you have manufactured homes. They go on full foundations, but you can take them and you can put them together. And that also is a slightly higher quality form of housing, not as good as what we refer to as stick built, where everything is mechanically attached to the foundation and built on site. But what we have now with volumetric modular is we can build stacked apartment complexes. We can build sections of homes to put these things together to where you would never know. And we can do multiple stories. I can go up to 11 stories. And, when you're talking about like some of the parts, urban areas downtown where, I know Columbus had the zone in where council did a phenomenal job taking that on. That was, anytime you're going to change zoning, especially in like the state's capital, that is a massive lift. And then just the education process of why we need it is another massive lift. And then, the confidence to vote on it was huge. And so what we need now, though, is it's still expensive to build vertically, and that's a problem. So what we can do with our volumetric modules is they are their own superstructure. So if I go to build a building, a hotel, apartment complex, affordable housing complex, anything, we have to like build a foundation and then we build like a structural exoskeleton. And it could be wood. That's where people say, oh, it's stick built apartments. Okay, yeah, you can do that. You could be concrete, which is some more your vertical, mid-level buildings. A lot of commerce trade buildings have concrete deck structures. And then you have, or cast in place. And then you have like these like steel structures. And that's like your most typical office building or large scale modern apartments. Well, you can't put drywall in or do an exterior or have electricians work on like one of those buildings until like after the trade before you is done. You know what I mean? So I can't put an electrician on a project if I am still pouring foundations or if I'm still doing the roof, right? Especially in Ohio where it's going to rain or snow every week. And so what we have in the factory is we can trade stack on day one. So like when we go, so there's like an overlap in the timing of a construction project. So when we do foundations, we're already trade stacking in the factory. So where it takes, 18 to 24 months to do an apartment complex, the trolley district, which is a very complicated site. We did that first on purpose. It's like sloping topography, poured walls, multiple levels, 5-story structure, elevator, double loaded corridor building with 2-story glass atrium, an awesome gym facility, rooftop deck. You know what I mean? All in a neighborhood that essentially like you have nowhere to spread out. So what essentially we're able to do there is all these units are essentially done in the factory. And we broke ground in March. And they're right now, I mean, just today, I think they're stacking 4 today. They're crane lifting these in and they're stacking them on top of each other. And the apartment complex will be done in late October, early November. So if you think about from March until call it November, I mean, just what we're able to do in those 8 months is incredible. So when you talk about delivering housing, it's because we're able to do all this in a factory without having to wait on the on-site trades like we typically do.
Wow. And talking about affordable housing and Ohio's supply shortage, how do you see your long-term goals for this project? And can you talk a little bit more about how you see this moving forward?
Yeah, so the barrier to entry to do this is very high. I mean, the amount of engineering, I mean, it comes down to people. Like, I mean, regardless of where technology takes us, it comes down to people. So to start a manufacturing company, pay for the equipment, we had to source equipment globally. And then to do this, we had to do it at an incredible scale to where once we build it, we didn't already have to expand. So obviously that takes an incredible amount of intestinal fortitude to take on something like that early because you're trying to prove a product, prove a plan, prove a process all at the same time. And we're really happy with where we're at. So what we're set up to do is high volume because that really is the only way to get scale. If you can't do an incredible amount of volume and you don't have a large amount of square feet under roof to do this in, you can't get the equipment and the robotics it takes to do this. So then a lot of people we've seen across the country are left doing construction indoors. And there's efficiencies to that, but not very many. So what we're doing with this is high volume. So what we want to do is we want to be able to put out a high quality product, which is what we're doing, regardless if it's market rate, regardless if it's student housing, regardless if it's affordable housing. I mean, affordable housing is kind of close to our heart because we want to help that market first. And that's kind of what we're doing. I think we have 3 low-income housing tax credit projects that are already planned right now. And one of them is with Alvis for their Amethyst program. So we see us putting out a product for other developers to utilize to allow them to get more scale and volume at an equal or better price. And there's a lot of different builders and different developers out there that they know their price points. But with our product, it's a high quality product from an energy perspective, from a quality of finish perspective, and you can't beat the timeline. I mean, once it gets into our development pipeline, we can build a 100-unit apartment complex in 12 weeks. So, and it's going to get faster. So, when we start, we can just put these out at a larger scale. Then it becomes shovel-ready projects is the next big thing. We talk about this every day. Like the worm's going to turn, and all of a sudden it goes from, hey, we got to get faster, to, hey, we're really fast, and where are we going to put these things? So that's what we're looking ahead to right now.
Do you think as we become more advanced in the building space that modular construction is the wave of the future for housing?
I mean, there are a lot of good ideas out there, and there are a lot of opinions, and people, I'm sure, have opinions about our product. And one of the things that we do is I've been a contractor for 23 years and a developer. So, I mean, I understand the entire project. We have a management company. So we understand, from inception to management, stabilization, how to do successful projects. There are great developers in Central Ohio. So what we did is I reached out, to some of the best that I know and had them come through, and they love it. And I think what it is we use standard construction materials. So we're not introducing things that maintenance men would have difficulty with down the road. So we just do it with a different process. We use prefabrication. Our frames are all rolled and punched by a machine. Like, we try to pride our assembly line on our employees not having to measure, cut, or drill. And by doing that, your variation is very little. Machines do all of that. So then our employees are just doing assembly, primarily assembly. And it puts them in a situation where they can win faster. And I think that's what's really going to help us scale. And by us being able to do this, it now is going to come out to where we add to the communities that we'll end up growing our facilities in, not only to the housing supply, but we can provide jobs. We can provide jobs to those that may be viewed as lesser skilled or may be viewed currently as disinvested. And that's what we look for. That's why we put this just north of the Linden area, is we wanted an area to where we didn't have to worry about transportation issues and things like that. We wanted to be right in the mix where we knew people needed jobs. So, that's where we're at right now. And obviously that comes with its complexities also, because you're trying to train employees how to be good employees before you train them how to be good manufacturing employees. So we're doing a good job right now.
That is amazing. Yeah, because not only are you, contributing to the housing supply, you're also contributing to our communities, giving people jobs. That's really amazing.
This has been a fascinating discussion, Brad. We really appreciate your time. It's clear that Connect Housing Blocks is not just building homes, but it's also paving the way for future construction in Ohio and beyond. Thank you so much for your insights today. We really appreciate all of your time.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you're as excited as we are about the future of housing, be sure to stay connected with us for more episodes. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.